Hey guys, welcome back to another Take 3 Schmoedown interview. I am, of course, Matt Kearns, and with me today, guys, we have one of the, I think John Roca said in our interview, we can now call him one of the veterans of the Schmoedown League, formerly of Team Action, but now of the greatest team ever made. Who's the boss? And I will say now, and it will be caught on video, as it's been several times, the future singles champ, Ben the Boss Bateman. How you doing, Ben?
I'm good, man. I'm good. It's Friday. I'm getting over my various ailments, recovering from back surgery, getting over this crazy winter cold that hit me, and just locked in. Just locked in. Happy to be here with you, talking Schmoedown. What you got for me, kid?
All right, well, let's talk about first. I think the first big thing to talk about is this match against Bibbs. You beat the
Yeah.
kid, you beat his partner, and now you're going into spectacular with this match against a former champ. How are you feeling about that?
I feel great about it. I feel as locked in, as lethal as I've ever felt in the Schmoedown. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff that I've stumbled with in the past as a player. Dilly-dallying with character stuff that I think. I just feel that I'm my true self as a Schmoedown pro right now, and I also feel I understand the game as well as I ever have. So I think I've said it before. I think Bibbs is very likely the most knowledgeable, top level knowledge player there's ever been. So you can't beat Bibbs unless you're going to go in there and go pound for pound. This is not going to be a TKO match for either of us. But I know that he's wanted it before and he's gotten it before, and I've never wanted it this bad, and I've never gotten it before.
You talk about this hunger, and I think that's an interesting thing about the 2019 season for you. Some would say it started off with a bang, others would say it was a crash. When at last year's Spectacular, after you came this close to being the new team champs against the Shire Wolves, your former partner, Dastardly Drew Guy, or whatever he wants to start calling himself, he, he sideswipes you quite literally. And then, of course, this whole thing, your season kind of starts off with the civil war against you and Drew. What has the 2019 season been like for you? Because I think, you joined the league back in 2017, I believe, maybe even.
Yeah.
Yeah. This, I think, is the most involved you've been in the Schmoedown out of all the seasons.
Yeah, well, okay. So if you think about it season to season, right? Like season four, Team Action comes in April, and we play two matches. I don't play in singles until I play that five-way with I lose that narrowly to Inman. I was such a rookie,
Yeah.
and that's it for singles for me that year. I don't play in singles again. So we go to the finals of the tournament. Team Action crests at 5-1. That's the best record we ever had, and we lose to Above the Line, a team that goes on to become one of the best teams of all time. But as you guys, a lot of you guys know, you tape all the matches in tournament season in a pretty short period. So you're playing every week or every 2 weeks for a little while, sometimes even two times in a day. So even though in the course of the season, Team Action was one of the A storylines that tournament season, I mean, we definitely made a big impact. It was really, we didn't become a significant piece of the league until the second half of that year. And that's season four is the same year you saw a lot of big things happen. The Patriots were still on their run that year. Above the Line was formed that year. You have Sam Levine going on his run that year. There's a lot of things that ultimately had more lasting impact than Team Action. Season five was a big turning point because we were prepped to become stars. I mean, Christian knew that. We knew we wanted to do that. We were prepped to really kind of become stars. And the interesting thing that's been talked about a lot is that in the first half of that season, things went the opposite direction that people expected. I had a fine singles performance that year. It wasn't anything special. I beat Dill the Dude. I lose to Andraco. I beat Scott Mance and a nail biter. I lose to Roca. So my singles season was just kind of like, eh. Team Action comes back with our first match in a really long time, and I want to say it's DC Movie News, and then it's the live event, the Shire Wolves, and Giancarlo Stanton happens. And so I think to call my season with Team Action that year while I was still on the team above 50% is probably wrong. I was basically a 50-50 player.
Yeah.
And I had the boss persona. I debuted that year. I changed my name. I brought out the briefcase. Like, I had the mirror, if you remember.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
putting on the
With a
table.
framed picture of yourself in it.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that's so important for fans to know and remember is that you can be a great character in the Schmoedown, you can make a big impact, but if you're not winning, people don't care. They'll care enough. You can if Dan Murrell is here and you're not winning, but you're a great
Hmm.
personality as a pro, you can be like right here. That's the highest you can get.
But your personality will only take you so far. Like, you need the wins. Because I think, and we've talked about this on the summit before, is for as much as there might be players and personalities and teams we love, if they don't win, they don't get matches and we just won't see them.
Yeah, and it's different if you're a manager. Like Dagnino can be pretty front and center, but again, like Dagnino's never going to be as front and center as Dan Murrell. He's never going to be as front and center as somebody who's winning matches. And so the weird thing that happens is that right in that summer, Drew has the weird prop match against Murrell that he pulls off. Obviously,
Yeah.
it's the greatest upset. It might be the single greatest match in the history of the Schmoedown, only because I think the emotions are so raw. It's a kind of experience as a viewer that there's very few matches in the Schmoedown I've ever
Believe me, Kristen Smith and me will never forget that match. And I think that was a turning point for Drew, and I think that's kind of what led to what happened to you guys later on in that season.
Well, yeah, so you're leading nicely into kind of what I was saying about the back half of the season, which is that, because he does that and then he beats Riley, um, he he had a rising star in a way. He knew it wasn't sustainable. We all kind of knew it wasn't sustainable, but it didn't matter. He had done it. He already had all the heat of team action. He had already done it, and I was having a pretty disappointing run. We lose our last match, and it's the Giancarlo Stanton moment, and as live shows are starting to happen, Drew's promo against Merle, the fake Merle thing we did with the Shirewolves match, becomes very clear to people how good of a performer he is. It becomes very clear to people just how electric of a talent Drew is as a performer. And so I think what people started to realize was we could be on equal levels in the Schmoedown for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
He obviously gets the extra boost. He gets the extra boost right there of having those two wins. So it's like all in that moment, he's white hot. There's nothing's going to stop him. And I think people sort of assumed, based on what I had shown for the most part with my trivia, that eventually my record would even out. But people didn't know. I mean, at that moment, I didn't totally know. You could say that last year I was equally involved, but I think about my career right now as a player starting with that tournament, last year's tournament.
Yeah.
I think about my career starting with the formation of Who's the Boss and going into that gauntlet tournament.
Yeah.
And if you count the matches that I've played, the ranked matches, the proper ones, throw out like free for alls or prop matches,
Yeah.
ridiculous match against the Drews where I had Finstock as my partner. But if you go with my real matches where I go in and it's intended to be equal playing field, I beat Janine, I beat Lon, lose to Clark, beat Drew, lose to Kalinowski. Now it's 3-2. Now you go into this year's singles tournament 3-0, so that's 6-2, right? Last year's tournament we go 4-0, so now that's 10-2, right? We lose one match, lose a second, so now it's 10-4. Now this tournament season starts. We're 11-4 right now.
Yeah.
Going into this next match. So I look at that and I think to myself, like, since last year's tournament season, I have to be doing something right. I have to be doing something right because
100%.
and the stats are there, and I don't have the title yet, but it's like I look at that was the beginning of becoming the player that I am now, where I've changed my method of study, I've changed my method of approach. I don't really think of it anymore. Like there was this thing that started with last year where I was sort of trying to be a face, but I was a face. I still am kind of a face. It's just it didn't fit me all the way to be that kind of a face.
I think this is actually something John talked about. I think you and John both now exist in this gray area to where you're not faces, but you're also not heels. And that is why you both are performing so well, is because I think because you both actually made the same switch of you went from heel to face, but I think since you've made this sort of turn towards this sort of gray area, now you're able to perform the way you're doing, because you're not a heel, so you don't have to worry about that persona and what that brings. But you also don't have to be a face, which allows you the ability to flex a little and be a little shit talky, which you're great at. And that also, I think, as someone who's watched your career since the start, that helps you to sort of ease yourself, and that's what's, you're close to winning the tournament and maybe even winning the belt because of that.
Yeah, I think so. I think like realizing when you go into a match, there's just so much to the game. I just love the game so much thinking about it. Like there's so many parts of the game. In football, people will talk about like all three phases. Offense, defense, and special teams. And it's like the Schmoedown. It's like I don't know how many. If we were going to try to break it down, how many phases there necessarily are, but it's like there's a ridiculous number of components that you can at least influence. It's not like you have as much control because it's not a physical game, but there are so many things. When you watch a player in round one go like 5 of 8 when they should have gone 7 of 8,
Mm-hmm.
but they didn't know how to navigate the clock. They didn't know how to buy or repeat. They didn't know how to sort of analyze the question to guess the correct answer. Things like that. When you think about like being in the lead or being behind in round two, and how do you navigate that with the way you interact with your opponent? If you're too in their face and talking during their questions too much, you'll get flagged for it. You'll get called for it. It's not allowed. But if you're doing it in a way that feels theatrical, you can kind of get away with it. You can, like, there's just so many things you can do. You can watch the way they react to their multiple choice options and often get information based on that. There's so many things that I think people don't realize are happening in a match that allow you to raise your percentage. And when you look at, I think it was Janish, I think, told me this.
If it's a stat thing, I'm pretty certain he's the only person who's told you it.
Yeah. I think he told me that since the beginning of team action, Drew's accuracy has gone up like, I want to say his accuracy has gone up 10%, which is like, that's a pretty significant jump. I mean, obviously, and you can see, with the family winning the matches they've been winning. Now, it's not as if those matches have been against killer teams. They haven't really played really good teams yet. I think have they even played a good team yet? They played our fake team. They played.
Yeah.
They played.
I don't think they've played like Who's the Boss Founding Fathers Corruption yet. I don't think they've played that level yet.
But his stats in those games is significantly better than it used to be, and he's winning a lot. And players, sometimes people will say like, "Oh, I lost because I missed the 5-pointer," but it's also like the difference of a couple points sometimes makes the 5-pointer not means something different. People will tilt differently. People will think longer. They'll like. Yeah, right?
I mean, we saw that at the New York event with Jeff. It was what lost Jeff the game was not the speed round. It wasn't 5-pointer. It was the fact that he second guessed himself in, I think, round one. That's what lost him the game.
Because Bill Cosby, right?
It was something he just changed them, and those are the things that you go, if he didn't do that, he would have had the 1 point over Oyama. And I agree, as someone who has who's been sort of an analyst of this sport for, God, I want to say we started back in 2017, so for a while now, I know what you're talking about. It really is crazy how many different facets. You can even tell when you're watching matches when someone has a good round two to a bad round two going into round three. You see their face. If they've had a character, if they're a heel, you kind of see them pull back the shit talking. And it's just, the Schmoedown is a total mental game. Not just in they ask a question, you have to go into your Rolodex, but just in it's all like, I think every sport is a mental game, but the Schmoedown so much because there's nothing else you could do. There's no like, you can't punch people, you can't like do stuff. Like, you are sitting at a table and it's just your mind and whatever comes to it and what's in it and what mental state you want to be in. And I think that's why someone like you performing as well as you've done, I think it's and again, seeing how you've changed and how you're doing this season, I think it takes a lot of dedication, and I think that's what makes the champs, are the ones who are willing to push through the bad round twos and then still get the 5-pointer and win round three and win the match.
Yeah, and I think, again, there's so many things like there are places you'll lose matches. I mean, you asked me, you started this interview by asking about William Bibiani,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't be surprised if Bibbs watches this. Like, I think he and I are interacting sparingly. I was on SEN Live yesterday, and I talked a little bit about Bibbs and the match, and he sent me a message about what I said, and I believe that if it comes down to the 5 point question, and one of us wins on the 5 point question, it's going to be based on something that we already knew, not something that we did to prepare for the match. Because you can't study 5 point questions. Because to study a 5 point question requires you to watch the movie, and not only watch the movie, but watch it while paying close attention to it to make sure if there is a plot detail, you could watch a movie and not realize the city the movie's in if you're not paying close enough attention. You could watch the movie and forget a character's name if you weren't paying close enough attention. Just because you can, right? Like, yeah. And those are often what 5 point questions are. And so you can study for round one, you can somewhat study for round two. It's very, very, very difficult to study beyond the 3-pointer.
Yeah.
And if it comes down to a 5, that's not something one of us could have prepared for. But I do truly believe the live setting, the speed round. I think Bibbs has, aside from free for all, Bibbs has never played in a live event. He's never had to deal with that kind of pressure. It's a different kind of pressure. I've done it a lot. I can tell you.
I agree. You have done it a lot, and I think free for all that is the only time he's ever done a live event. He was supposed to do. I think he was supposed to do the Arizona live event, which ended up not happening. But I think
we were supposed to do Orlando.
True. But then I think free-for-all is also just round one, which Bibbs is very good at round one, as we see. He's come this close to winning free-for-alls, and I think that's a different game as well, because round one is very, like... I don't want to say round one is ever easy, but it's not like round three, like what you're talking about. It's not that.
Free-for-all is not round one, though. It's the weird part. Free-for-all is actually, and it's been confirmed by Skolicki, it's not all round one questions. Free-for-all is a mixture of round one and round two. It's weird that that's how they do it. I don't do particularly well on free for all for whatever reason. I did better last year. I think I went 7 rounds last year, but
that's because I was there last year.
But I mean, I do really think that the live setting makes a major difference. And in the live setting matches that I've lost, it's not because I've played badly. It usually has come down to one mistake or one wrong question. So. Versus the one live event where I played extraordinarily well and hit someone with a chair, obviously KO'd someone.
Great. But I think the other thing that for you is the fact of what you're talking about is the live events don't frighten you. You don't lose the matches because you're too focused on playing to the crowd or doing all this. Like, you play the match. And the live crowd is there, and you'll play for them when you walk in, but once you get into the ring, and you quite literally got into a ring at a live event, you're focused on the match. And I think that's something, and again, Bibbs may be watching this, I don't mean offense this, but Bibbs is very theatrical. And I feel like that could be something to his detriment.
Yeah, there's also a fascinating sort of extra level to this whole thing, which is that for either of us, to win the first match only means that you're playing again. It only means that you're playing against the fully rested champ that's and also the weirdest thing is, all 3 of us have to prepare for 2 players, only one of which we're going to play.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's not true. One of us will actually play 2 players.
Yeah.
Right? 2 of us will only play 1 player. And so it's, for any of us, I mean, how do you prepare for a player in the Schmoedown, right? I think that's something that's interesting is if you look at there's only a couple aspects of the entire game that are actually interactive. Aside from talking smack, there's your wheel slice requests. You can request your wheel slices. You can analyze what you think is going to be on the wheel and what you think they know, and you can request your slices based on that. There's opponents and spinners. Those are obviously, those are basically the most interactive parts. But beyond those, the 5-round match tends to be the most interactive because of speed round.
Yeah.
And so it will be really interesting to see, what has Bibiani done? Does Bibiani have a strategy play, or is Bibiani so knowledgeable that focusing on one narrow niche or something like that is not something that he wants to do? I know for myself when it comes to watching movies, I don't really watch movies to study in Schmoedown anymore. It's something early on that I stopped doing because I don't want to watch movies that I don't feel like watching just for the sake of this sport.
Yeah.
I do too many things in my life and I review too many movies to spend the hours required. I mean, like this came up recently, or I can't remember. Somebody asked about Inner Geekdom, I think, and I was saying to them like, let's take any of the slices in Inner Geekdom that are like not my strongest. Like I know Middle Earth pretty well because like I love the Lord of the Rings movies. I've seen all the Hobbit movies, and MCU I know really well. Seen most of the DCU movies. Harry Potter I've seen all of them once back in like 2011, so I like know all the characters. Star Trek's good, right? I've missed a lot of Star Trek movies. For me to watch every Star Trek movie, if I was going to take the time in my life to watch Star Trek, just in case fucking Paul Oyama or William Bibiani wanted to put Star Trek on the wheel, it would require me to spend almost 30 hours of my life. 30 hours.
Yeah.
I'm the vice president of a fucking corporation. I travel around the world. Like that's my job, right? Like I do all the media stuff. I work really hard at it. I love everything I do. Action Industries, you're wearing the sweatshirt right now. We run this. For me to invest 30 hours of my life to a tiny sliver of a possible contingency that may never happen. Right, like the new ones. I love '09 Star Trek. It's great. My mom showed me Wrath of Khan when I was a kid, like the slugs, whatever. That's cool. I don't want to watch Nemesis and Insurrection. I don't want to watch Generations of First Contact. Like, no way.
First Contact's great, by the way, but
what?
I'm a Star Trek nerd, so First Contact's great, and Insurrection's underrated. But
and maybe someday, if I ever get in there Geekdom or something, I'll spend the time. But like, I don't care if you're watching this Bibs Royale.
Exactly.
Like, I'm just not going to do it because I have movies that I want to watch, I have movies I don't want to watch, and there are way too many good movies that I haven't watched that I do want to watch. I want to go watch Double
Indemnity. Would you say 100?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, plug. But I think that's so smart because I think the thing about that is you're going to retain. You talked about this earlier about the 5-pointer is the 5-point questions are the random city that this scene takes place in, or the random secondary character. You're not going to retain that if you're watching the movie for work, for studying. Like, if you watch Star Trek, you're going to sit there, and the things you're going to pay attention to are the ship name in Wrath of Khan, or how many times they fire phaser, like, the things that you're like, oh, well, this might show up. But you're not going to pay attention to Carol Marcus. No. And those are the things that are the 5-point questions. And I think that is so smart because I think we've seen that be so detrimental to so many people in Schmoedown since 2016. The people who sit there and they go and they watch these movies that they don't want to watch because they think maybe their competitor's going to put it on there. And then they get the question about that movie, but it's like a 2-point question and they forget it because they filled their head with the random who the boom operator is in the movie.
Most of the stuff that you ever would need to answer about any movie that exists in the Schmoedown, outside of the 5-point question, you can get by looking on IMDb. You can get by, honestly, by spending 2 minutes looking at the movie. Now, the trick becomes there are, since 1970, there are over 14,000 premiere released films in the United States. If you're going to go with the top 3 releases on each given week, calendar week on a 52-week year, since 1970. You've got, at this point, since I came up with that stat, I think it's probably actually more like 16,000, but or 15, almost 16,000. And that's a ton of movies. That's way too many movies to have any kind of a system to go through and just like catalog information. Like there's no way. There's absolutely no way. But, you can at least try to kind of study. And then it gets even deeper and deeper when you start thinking about who's writing the questions.
I think we would be remiss in our conversation if I did not mention, you talked about it earlier, you kind of alluded to it, but something that happened to you last year, quite possibly the greatest thing to ever happen to Schmoedown since your new teammate winning the belt the second time, you became teammates in the Anarchy tournament with the true GOAT, Mark Riley, and manager, Tom Dagnino.
Yeah.
Just how has Who's the Boss changed you? Like, how has Who's the Boss been? Like, from where you guys started at the start of the Anarchy tournament to where you are now with the 5 Horsemen? How has that been for you to sort of see this team that was really picked out of a hat into you guys are on your road to possibly facing your stable mates for the belts.
Yeah. I think there's like a few things about it that have been really interesting. I mean, things that have changed, how it's changed me. I think, again, I talked about the beginning of that tournament to now. When I think we started, both Riley and I looked at each other as kind of like, I can win with this guy, right? Like I think we both were like, this guy's talented, he's good, he understands it, he's cerebral. All the stuff I'm talking about game theory, Riley was not familiar with a lot of this stuff. This was not really how he played. He was much more classic Schmoedown veteran. Like he would kind of brush up on what he knew, but he would mostly watch movies. And so when we started, it was like, okay, I bring this side, you bring that side. Now when we approach the game, it's no longer like I'm looking at a veteran who's a champion, and I'm hoping that with him and I'm backing him up, we can win.
Yeah.
I think Riley kind of looks at me as 1A and him as 1B. I think here, it's like we know as much as each other. I think in a lot of cases Riley knows more than I do. But in terms of game approach, I think I'm the lead player on the team now.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a big change going into this year. I think we're both more comfortable in that role. I think Riley likes that. He likes in game. I tend to stay pretty calm and pretty focused. We will work through decision making together pretty beautifully. Like there's not a lot of missed ground. We cover most ground pretty well. Dagnino, I mean, he's obviously got a talent on the mic. He gets it. I mean, one thing I'll say about Tom, and I said this to someone else the other day, but like to date in the Schmoedown, there's not an active manager that understands how to manage in the way that managers will be asked to manage in 2020. No one has ever done it in the way that the game is going to start requiring it to be done.
Next season is going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting.
Because the managers that are active currently have brought really specific skill sets that have helped the game, but they also you can get an offensive advantage or a defensive advantage if your manager is playing correctly. There are things you want your manager to be doing, right? And so Tom is kind of learning that stuff on the fly, right? But he cares. He's really invested. He's not your manager who's going to kind of stand there on the side and just cheer and root for you and just better luck next time. He'll try to break every rule he can to get us an advantage. Like, Tom he's very invested, and I think he brings a nice levity to what we're doing. He takes it seriously, but he also is kind of a crack up. And I think I tend to take things pretty seriously. Riley tends to get on that level. So when we're really locked in, we're feeling emotional about winning. He has a nice tendency to want to perform, but also keep it light.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the best things that he brings to the team.
I think as someone who is, it was so funny, we had the joke last year that this was like my dream team because I was a fan of all three of you separately. And what I've seen is, since Who's the Boss formed, you've all changed for the better. Like, Tom, I think, is taking the game more seriously than he's ever taken the game. This is a guy who was almost the team champ with JTE. Mark, I've seen his game change exponentially. The biggest thing is Mark he was very much, particularly in 2016, when he would miss round one questions, stuff like that, you would see it affect him into the rounds. Whereas now, I think thanks to you, he kind of lets it roll off his back. It's just like, all right, Mystic, go on to the next question. I think for you, the two of them have also helped your game, which is all great because all three of my favorites are doing so much better. But then, of course, you now joined with someone who you once hated, and someone who I think you've always respected, but kind of around the time you were making your ascension is when he left. John Roca, Dan Murrow. You're now in faction with them. How has that been for you to now be with three vets in the league, all three previous champions? How's that been for you this season?
I think Dan is the Dan for a reason, right? I mean, Dan's pretty much undisputed as the greatest of all time, and he keeps to himself for the most part. He's a really talented player. He's changed his game. He's evolved a lot. Dan takes the game seriously. He took it seriously back then too, but he takes it seriously now in a way you can see he doesn't want to leave points on the table. And Roca is so seasoned at this point. He's almost overcooked. I'm just kidding. I mean, John and I think the thing with John and I that's been the most fun about being in a faction together is it used to be he was, and this is the weirdest fucking thing, Kearns. This is probably the strangest, like, I've talked about this a lot, but how the Schmoedown will blend life and theater. It's never like it's only one or it's only the other. But Roca and I, we were formerly like colleagues, we were friendly, we were friends even. But he viewed himself as kind of the veteran, the champion, and me as this like sort of cocky young buck upstart, who wasn't quite good enough, but maybe someday, but never as good as him. And once I joined the Horsemen, I can learn from you as much as you can learn from me. And so we've joked a lot about it. We've shared study tips. We've shared information. We've talked. I had a long conversation with him before Orlando on the phone about how to approach the match with Bibiani, talking about wheel slices, strategy, percentages, how to play things. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. And Roca listens, just the same as I listen to what Roca has to say, because he's played, like, I've never played Bibs one-on-one. Roca has. He's played Bibs one-on-one multiple times. Like, Roca is a champion and a veteran for a reason. He's gone toe-to-toe with the best the game's ever seen. A lot of players I've never played one-on-one. And so I think that there's like this mutual respect. He's like the member of the Horsemen that I feel like I can fuck with the most, and he can do the same to me. And it's no longer like I'm like the young pup, like, nipping at his heels or whatever, like it was in 2017. Now it's like heavyweights, it's like Barkley and Jordan, and I guess he's Jordan as of now. I'm Barkley, but like it's that kind of respect when they're in their prime, and it's like on any given night kind of a thing.
To make my obligatory Rocky reference, as I often do, it's kind of like you're Adonis and he's Rocky. But
Sure,
you're Adonis and Creed 2 to when now you have a champ, you guys are on the same level. It's no longer Apollo's son trying to be, Uncle Rock. Now it's you guys are on a similar level. 2019 season, it's wrapping up. You're going into 2020 with this draft, and you mentioned it very briefly about the managers, but for you, because of course this draft, I think more than anything, is such a you don't know what's going to happen. Are you excited for this? Are you excited for maybe Tom still being your manager and who could be on your team with you, or maybe if you get put with someone else? Like, are you nervous? Are you excited? Are you both?
I mean, it's interesting thinking about that, like the different managers that have been announced and how I would vibe with them. I answered this question on a chilled action maybe last week or 2 weeks ago, but I think like the truth of the matter is I'm going to be champion at the end of the season. So really, I'm going to be retained by Tom Dagnino, and that's the contingency that I'm assuming is happening next season. And it's also totally conceivable that going into next season, like it's highly likely, in fact, that the Horsemen core with Dagnino as our manager stays totally intact. Because there's a total possibility that it's going to be who's the boss versus founding fathers at Spectacular, and if that's the case and I win both titles, then you have a real possibility where all four players are easily retained. I think it's probably more likely we all get retained if I win singles. Yeah, in fact, if I win singles but lose teams and they beat whoever else, if they beat us, then Dagnino gets to keep all of us, I believe. So I think there's a pretty good chance that I don't have to worry about it next season. Now, I guess there's some nightmare scenario. There's no real nightmare scenario where who's the boss breaks up, I don't think, because we won our first round matchup. Yeah. So I think we would have to lose. I think even if we were to lose in the second round of the tournament, I still don't think we drop out of the top five. Though I don't know. I'd have to see how the tournament shakes out to know that. But I guess if we're just talking about like fantasy scenario, if I was drafting, because that's one thing I talked about on SEN yesterday a little, was like I really wish in some ways that I was going to be a manager. I would love to draft players. I think I could draft and coach such a good star. I think I think I have a foolproof 60-day system to take somebody. Like I think I could take somebody from like I don't know, like an Adam Lavick level IG player. I think I could put them on the like Janine Eric Zipper or higher level. I think it'd be hard to train someone in 60 days to put them on the like the like
Smets
Roka
Kalinowski. Yeah, that'd be
But
crazy.
I could train somebody to the Kalinowski singles teams level. I believe I have the system that would work to do it. So I would love to be a manager and like players I would draft or managers that I think will be good. You know, Christian and I, again, we acknowledge this. We've been working on something together. We're going to try to have a pretty significant prize to award the top finishing faction at the end of the season based on points. You know, there's going to be a point system, and we're trying to put something in place to make it really worthwhile for the top team to make it.
Into the end, we're wrapping up. Ben, is there anything else with this season or anything else in the Schmoedown in general you want to talk about just real quick to wrap up with?
Just get your tickets. December 7th, Spectacular in Los Angeles. We got January 25th in New York. I mean, huge things on the horizon. Season 7 is going to be really, really bright. I'm very proud of a lot of the work I've done as head of business for the Schmoedown, and I think that we're taking this product in a really great direction. Obviously, check out Action Industries everywhere. Kearns is a big part of that. He runs the Twitter at Team Action Show. We've got a Patreon. We do a bunch of shows every week. Andrew and I work our asses off doing that. So check out Action Industries, and I'm just looking forward to Spectacular, man. It's gonna be my night. I've got about a month, and I feel ready. So
got it. You're gonna be double belted by the end of that night. I know it. All right, so guys, that was it. Another great interview with Ben Bateman. He's been on the show for a while. Good friend. One of the first, I think actually you and Andrew were one of the first interviews I think we actually did on this channel. So thank you for your continued patronage, fandom of us. I don't know. Thank you for giving up part of your night to talk to us randos. You guys, as always, can find me at Kearns_Matthew on Twitter, MattMoves611 on YouTube and WordPress, and right here as host of Second Look, and every Monday live at 9 p.m. EST on The Summit. All right, thank you again, Ben. Thank you to Kristen and everyone else, and we will see you on the next interview.